Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and you are listening to the Forbes Books Podcast. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the intersection of spirituality and capitalism. So yeah, it's going to be your typical business podcast. This week, I'm joined by Katie Fink, the founder of Mind, Body, Soul Market, an online marketplace that connects folks with a network of expert astrologers, psychics, products, and more. She's going to talk about her own spiritual and entrepreneurial journey and what inspired her to build the Mind, Body, Soul Market. Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, Joe, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It is truly a delight in my day.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. And Katie, I'm going to get really mystical like you. Even though this is sort of your bag, I'm going to do it, okay? Do you feel like you were born and sort of living and creating this company at the right time? And the reason I bring this up is, for example, like a Mark Zuckerberg type. If he was born in the 50s or 60s, there would be no Facebook. He wouldn't have been able to make people's lives miserable back then, but he can now because of technology. But now that you've built this marketplace here in 2020, 2022, do you feel like this is fate?
Absolutely, Joe. And I love that we're going to get mystical together because that's definitely my jam. It does feel like complete divine timing to me. When I first got the idea for Mind, Body, Soul Market, it came to me at a women's circle in February of 2020. And at the time, I thought, wow, it would be amazing to have this platform where we could find trusted providers to support us at the mind, body, and soul level. But I thought for myself, how would I have the capacity to build something like that while working in a full-time corporate environment? Fast forward to March, the world shifted ever so slightly, March 2020. And I wasn't commuting. I just had a little extra couple hours in my day to start brainstorming and planning. And eventually it took about 2 full years and we launched the business in April of 2022.
Wow. And I want to go back to that day when you kind of had this idea. So you said you were working a corporate job. Did you have any entrepreneurial aspirations, or were you just kind of like a corporate drone doing your thing, getting a nice paycheck, health insurance, all that jazz? Did you have like delusions of becoming a tech entrepreneur?
You know, I've always had this entrepreneurial thread throughout my career. I went to Babson to get my MBA in entrepreneurship back in maybe 2009, 10. And that really was the start of me thinking, wow, there's really something to this. And from that point forward, I took a corporate entrepreneurship journey and gravitated to all the startups within a Fortune 100 company. And I got to play in that space for 10, 12 years until recently when I left to go out on my own.
Wow. And how scary is that? Because I talk to entrepreneurs all the time, Katie, and I just don't know how you guys do it. Like, I really have, like, to me, it seems so frightening. And that's why I love talking to entrepreneurs. I mean, I spent 20 years talking to artists and musicians and actors, and I feel like that was an easy way, you know, as hard it is to become that. But for entrepreneurs to gamble their savings and their life and change of life, that seems like a lot, Katie.
Yes. There's definitely days, moments that are scary. And in those moments, I just remind myself that it's bigger than me. It's not about me and my being scared. It's about me stepping into my fullness and showing a new path forward. I know that those before me, when I see them shining in their fullness, it creates a path where they brighten the road for me so that I can follow it. So I've really leaned on watching other entrepreneurs' journeys to inspire me and to motivate and try to surround myself with really high vibrational, interesting and expansive human beings doing other life-changing work in the world. So that's been a helpful part of my journey. And certainly there are just days that are scary. I was talking earlier today with a fellow entrepreneur, Wen Zhang, and she was describing entrepreneurship as a spiritual journey. And I really love that. It really is a journey of self-discovery, just like our own spiritual journeys.
And what did you discover about yourself since, February of 2020? Did you come to the realization, it's like, yeah, I was made for this? Or were there some sort of, there's obvious struggles, but were there some things where like, man, I had no idea that this was going to be part of being an entrepreneur?
Great question. For me, what was interesting is I'm a big meditator, and what kept coming through during my meditations was raise your vibration and all else will flow. And that was that message that I kept getting over and over. Raise your vibration and all else will flow. And that's really what I started to focus on. And when I did that, and I actually went inward, instead of doing what I was used to, the hustle of grind it out and push and make things happen.
Don't forget the bootstraps.
The bootstraps.
Yeah.
I went inside and really focused on my own inner work and how I could continue to raise my vibration, bring more light, bring more joy, bring more happiness into my daily life. And that would flow into the company. And for example, something like this is an outcome. I wasn't hustling to try and get on the Forbes Books podcast. By the way, this is my first podcast, so it's very exciting.
Doing good so far, Katie.
Honor.
You're doing good
Thank
so
you.
far. Yep.
And a friend connected us, which is so beautiful. And that's really what raising your vibration does. Things just flow into your life in a synchronistic way. And it's a new way of doing business. It's a much more pleasurable way of doing business. And certainly you do have to have strategies and execute them, but really getting in the flow of how much your own vibration impacts your business.
You may be too humble to answer this question, but do you feel like you were spiritually prepared to be an entrepreneur? Because you talk about the spiritual journey of an entrepreneur. We always talk about the book smarts and the street smarts of being an entrepreneur, but spiritually, do you think you were prepared for this because of all the work you put into yourself before you started the company?
Absolutely. And I also believe that being on this journey of entrepreneurship is further enhancing my spiritual growth too. So it's really twofold. If I think back 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been ready to start this business. So I was really living in that space of the hustle. And now I'm moving into my mantra right now is heart over hustle, because the hustle, I've lived in that space, the grueling schedule, the juggling, the putting everyone else's needs above my own. And all of that left me with a broken body, truly broken, a foggy mind, and a really disconnected soul. And now I'm in a place where I'm able to lead from the heart and focus on raising my vibration and letting the rest flow. And that was a journey, and it involved a lot of inner work. And I believe our lifetimes are filled with inner work and expanding. And for me, I'm fascinated by the mysteries of the universe. And so it's really pretty magical that I've now created a business that lets me explore those mysteries every single day and meet with interesting people and beings in the space. And I feel so fortunate and today prepared.
That's awesome. And talk to me about your spiritual awakening journey. I mean, can you mark it down to a certain date when you were sort of this, Oprah aha moment where you're like, life is more than this, life is more than the hustle that you were talking about? Was there a specific day, or was it something that happened over time for you?
I think I always had that inner knowing, Joe, throughout my life. Like there was something more out there. As a kid, I was always interested in learning about different religions and practices. And as I fast forwarded into adulthood, I pushed a lot of those things down and really went a more traditional route. Go to college, get a good job, work 9 to 5, play on the weekends. And I always had this feeling like, ooh, there's something else out there. There's more to this life than the way I'm living. So for me, at that time, it was really about breaking down to break through. I experienced some traumatic life events, the family disease of addiction, the ending of a marriage, the brokenness of my body as I really wasn't expressing my own needs. And I really physically took on a lot in my body. My back was pretty broken. My hands and feet were going numb all the time. And I just remember getting outside one day and praying, getting on the ground and saying, there has to be more than this. And that moment led me to a local women's circle. And that's really where my path to wholeness began. I was really fortunate that a priestess who happens to now be a vendor on our site, Sarah Jenks, moved in right around the neighborhood and has a temple at her home. And that was one of the places that I went to repair and to heal. And many of our vendors on the marketplace are people that helped me and supported me on my own personal journey. And I think often, you know, that saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That happened to me so many times.
Wow. And you talk about it as a marketplace. It's called the Mind, Body, Soul Market. Just speaking to you for the last few minutes, it's safe to assume this is sort of like a spiritual Etsy, right? Is that a good description?
Yeah, we're like a spiritual Etsy, and we have products, we have classes and services. So for me, there's so many paths into your awakening journey. For some people, it might be through astrology or a health and wellness coach or feng shui, human design. And we wanted to create a safe place with trusted vendors that could really spark that in you. So that's what we're up to.
And with the people that you have on the site as the quote unquote vendors, what's the vetting process like? Because one thing is for someone to have an actual object that they're selling, you just show the picture. When it comes to some of these service, whether it's astrology or some sort of meditation type class, how do you work that? How do you give them sort of like the gold stamp of approval that they can be part of the mind, body, soul market?
Great question. So it started out really as just my own network, and from there it evolved, and now it's become more of a referral basis. So our current vendors often say, hey, you should meet with so-and-so, or, oh, this would be a really interesting offering. And we go through the same vetting process to keep it equitable for all our vendors. We make sure that we test and trial their products, their classes, and their services, and that we can really stand behind them and know that they're safe and their offerings are going to enhance our community.
Is that sort of I guess, in this world of spirituality that, it's part of capitalism now. Like, people are making money off of spirituality, whether it's, an entrepreneur who has their own business or someone trying to do something larger than that and build a community. How do some of these bad actors and people that are shysters, how does that worry you or affect what you guys do? And not saying that you have any connection to those people, but I'm just saying in terms of like when you hear these stories of spirituality, unfortunately, the mainstream media will pick up only the bad ones.
Yes. And I've had my own personal experience with less above board people. And so for me, creating a safe space was really critical and important. And I think we're in a new era where it's based on a new kind of luxury, that our own wholeness is a luxury to ourselves. And instead of maybe going out and buying a fancy dress or spending money on a dinner out, Investing in yourself and something that's going to enhance you for the long term, I believe, is the new luxury. And that's what we're offering, is a new approach to wholeness.
And obviously, you can't build a company like this unless you're Gwyneth Paltrow on your own. So, what? How did you do it? What, investors, family, friends? Take me back to the beginning.
Sure. So I am actually bootstrapping the company, and I've learned to never say never, but today that strategy has worked. My background was in digital experience, so I had a good leg up in how to build a website, which was really helpful on this journey since it is web-based today. And I leveraged my network. I am incredibly fortunate to have a wide network to lean on. I'm part of a mastermind community with a group called Feely, and I lean on my mastermind all the time. In my cohort, there's 10 women, all from different industries. And every time I have a question or a need, I ping the group or I ping other people in my life. And typically, there are people that are able to point me in the right direction and help me and give me guidance. And that has been absolutely critical, is having a strong network. And I've also been extremely fortunate to build a very small and mighty team. And it's a beautiful team to work with. There's just 3 of us today. And we have a lot of fun. We had a great meeting this morning about brainstorming for the future. And we start off all of our team meetings with a question of the week. And so it's really a great way for us to drop in, get grounded, and then proceed with the strategy of the business.
Talking to you for a little while here, I feel like you've got the visionary CEO thing down pat. Like,
Yes.
it's clear that Katie Fink knows what the vision of the company is. But how is operator CEO Katie Fink? How is she doing?
Oh my gosh, it's ironic that you asked that question. So I was reflecting on this recently. In my corporate journey, have always operated really well where I could play that visionary role, and I had a strong integrator by my side. And that model has worked so effectively for me for so many years. And that will be the first position that I hire full time. The 2 people that work in the business with me today do still have full-time jobs. And so they're spending their side time with me, which I am so grateful for. And when we're ready to hire our first full-time employee, it will be an integrator, otherwise known as a COO.
Right. And so how are you doing so far without that COO?
Well, I'm leaning on my new skill sets, and it's been a journey. It's not my sweet spot. It's not where I'm at my best. And so I'm just treating it as a growth experience. It's interesting. Whenever we set a big goal, there's always this initiation phase that we go through. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've learned to expect it now, that when we set these big goals, we have to go through an initiation, and it's not always up and up in the beginning. And you have to go through some things that are going to test you and make you stronger. And you're going to have to learn how to execute your SEO strategy and your email strategy and the nuts and bolts of your business. And ultimately, that makes you stronger as a leader. And I'm also looking forward to the day that I'm able to bring in a co-creator who can help me integrate all these big visions and ideas. We are exploding right now with endless ideas.
And as a leader, you've got this, again, you've got the spirituality down pat, but, it's going to come the day where you might have to kind of sort of turn that off a little bit and be like the hardline boss, where you might have to fire someone or move people around. How do you marry those two things? Because I feel like that's probably the toughest part when it comes to doing any kind of wellness entrepreneurship venture where it's rooted in wellness, but it's also a business where sometimes being a business owner kind of sucks and you have to do things you really normally wouldn't want to do. How are you sort of formulating that in your brain?
Great question, Joe. And those are never easy conversations to have. However, what I've learned throughout my career is I always treat it as a gift to myself and a gift to the individual. And throughout my corporate life, certainly there were times where people needed to move on to find something new. And it wasn't always easy, those endings, but endings create a pathway for a new beginning. And I saw countless times where people went on to do something that was more purpose-driven, that really filled their soul. And so now I truly see all the endings as gifts, even when they're more challenging conversations.
And you've said before that what inspires you the most is people living their purpose.
Yes.
How do you know that? Like, what is your purpose radar like? Can you, when you meet someone, when you're talking to them, can you tell that they're living their purpose, or is it something that's so granular that it's hard to tell?
Oh, I think it's pretty easy to tell when they're smiling, when they're lit up, when they're energized by what they're talking about. You know that they're living their purpose.
Does it sound like I'm living my purpose?
Oh my gosh, you are definitely meant to do this. You're flowing, you're in the flow, and my sense is there's even more expansiveness for you ahead.
Wow, I'm not just a college dropout from New Jersey. There's more to me than that?
Oh my gosh, you are made for this.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's very sweet. I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but I felt like, hey, listen, if you know how to judge people if they have their purpose, I would just want to ask.
And more importantly, do you feel like you're living your purpose?
To be honest with you, Katie, I feel like I'm doing like the one thing I know how to do. I had this joke for many, many years when I was working in radio full time. I'm very unemployable. Like there's only so many jobs that I could do with the skill set that I have. And I feel like the job I have now, hosting podcasts and consulting folks and getting them prepared to be podcasters themselves, I feel like that's I'm just using all the tools and skill sets. If whatever the higher power or some sort of chemistry experiment gone wrong created me, that's what I'm doing. And I think like that's all I can do right now in my life.
So the ping that I'm getting to share with you is to read the book, The Big Leap.
Okay.
Have you read it?
No, I'm writing it down though.
Okay, it's a great book. It's by the author's Gay Hendricks. And what he talks about in the book is your zone of excellence and your zone of genius. So for me, corporate America was my zone of excellence. I was good at it. It was secure. It made people in my life comfortable. It provided, and it was great. It just wasn't my zone of genius. What I'm doing now is really living my zone of genius. And often we do have to make a big leap in order to get to our zone of genius where we're truly living our purpose. And sometimes there can be connection points between our zone of excellence and our zone of genius. That book was really helpful to me on my journey.
Wow.
In taking the big leap. I highly recommend it.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm wondering, the way you made it sound was your family or friends or whatever people in your life liked corporate Katie. How did they feel when wellness Katie came to be? Were they worried? Were they like, Katie, what are you doing? Why are you throwing away these opportunities for something that is so new and so it's such a gamble? How did you deal with those people in your life?
It's funny. I was chatting with my parents this weekend, and my dad was an entrepreneur. And I was saying to him, wow, this journey, I'm not sure you and mom really are getting it. And he said, you know what, Katie, my parents, they never understood what I was doing. And you just have to ignore it. And I think he was giving me permission to ignore the fact that they don't really get it, and that's okay. And maybe someday they will. And what's important is they love me and they support me from behind the scenes on the journey, even if they don't understand it. I also have found it helpful to surround myself with people who do understand what I'm doing and don't think that I'm a total nut for leaving behind the nice paycheck and security. So that has been helpful too. My close network is really high vibrational and understands the space and why I'm living out my big dream.
And you use the word vibration a couple times in the conversation. I guess is another term parlance maybe energy as well, like the energy you get from other people.
Totally.
What is it that you do that makes it easy for you to surround yourself with those people that give you the good vibrations, the good energy? Is it something that you're intentionally doing, that you're only seeking these people, or is it something that, maybe even a little more metaphysical, where you're putting out this energy and this is what's coming back at you?
Yeah, if you're okay getting metaphysical for a minute.
Yeah.
So we are all energetic beings. And when we raise our own vibrations, we're like little magnets, and new people and new experiences can come into our lives more easily. It is a little bit out there to understand. I'll try and give an example to make it a little bit easier.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but sometimes when I'm taking a walk or I'm in the shower or I'm driving, I have these epiphanies, these aha moments. And in that moment, this magic is created and I get this idea and I know where I'm going and the dots start to connect and it all makes sense. And in those moments, what I'm actually doing is I'm quieting my mind and I'm listening and I'm more in meditative states, or maybe even folding laundry is a great example too, where you can receive these divine downloads in those states. So just like when you're at the gym and you're working out your muscles, you go a couple times a week, you want to build your muscles, you want to make them stronger. Working on your own energetic levels, or your vibration is another term for it, is the same way. So the more that I can quiet my mind and get into a meditative state, the easier that is for me to access in the future. And that's really how the right people and places and things come into my life. The more I do this, the more I believe in it.
And let's talk business. This is a business podcast, so might as well bring it up. What makes this business venture a success? Like, how do you judge it as a success? Is it dollars? Is it subscribers? Is it vendors? What does Katie Fink think the mind, body, soul marketplace is a success?
I love this question. And for me, what makes it a success is feedback from our customers and our vendor community, sharing stories of how their lives have been enhanced or changed in a positive way through this community. For me, that is the number one measure of success. Certainly on a more 3D level, driving and generating revenue is a great benchmark, great KPI, great measure of success. But for me, it's more than that. It's really about changing lives and enhancing people's experiences on this planet. I truly believe, having lived through it myself, there is an easier, more pleasurable way forward.
Her name is Katie Fink. She's the CEO and founder of Mind, Body, Soul Market. Katie, it's an amazing marketplace that you built up. It's funny. I always say the mark of a successful company is something that you think of has already existed. And I feel like this Mind, Body, Soul Market that you have is something that has existed, but hasn't to this extent. And I feel like you're just beginning and just getting going. And I cannot wait to see that you guys become truly the mystical Etsy of the World Wide Web. So thank you very much for the time, Katie.
Oh, thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Aw, thank you so much. To find out more about Katie and her team, go to mindbodysoulmarket.com. And that's it for another episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you take a quick second to subscribe so you automatically get my new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.